What I am about to tell you may change how you understand emotional pain in relationships for the rest of your life. After 2 decades of listening to stories that should have ended in tenderness but instead ended in confusion and shame, I discovered a pattern more corrosive than indifference. Indifference is a closed door. It hurts, but it is honest. The pattern I am describing harms more because it pretends to be love while training your nervous system to doubt itself. It is a calculated strategy, the most subtle and the most destructive form of psychological aggression I see today. It has a clinical name. Emotional intermittency. Emotional intermittency is the oscillation between warmth and coldness, closeness and distance, presence and disappearance, praise and devaluation, without transparent context, without accountability, and without a stable commitment to relational repair. It is not a concept invented by internet trends, and it is not a self-help slogan. It is a clinical reality with a neurobiological footprint measurable in the stress response, the reward system, and the memory consolidation pathways of the brain. In my case files, women who are professionally brilliant and emotionally generous become exhausted by a cycle that at first looks like passion and later feels like an invisible chain. He says "I love you" and vanishes. He returns with flowers and urgent declarations. He promises change and delivers a short honeymoon that collapses into silence as soon as vigilance drops. The brain cannot adapt and therefore cannot protect you. Unpredictability is the hook. Your reward system is baited with short bursts of affection after long droughts. The very quality that makes human learning possible, neuroplasticity, turns against you. The brain wires itself to chase the next dose. Dopamine is not a romance hormone. It is a prediction hormone. It rises most when the brain cannot predict reward with certainty. Casinos are built on this law. Social media timelines are engineered with this law. Emotional manipulators discover it by instinct. When affection is withheld and then delivered in small unexpected bursts, the dopamine spike is higher than if affection had been consistent. That spike trains attention, memory, and motivation to stay. Your mind comes to equate unpredictable relief with victory. Your body learns to wait for crumbs. Over time, this conditioning does not simply hold you in place. It reshapes your internal story about love and worth. I have met Lucia, who did not know that the extreme contrasts she described were the very mechanism used to keep her attached. I have met Claudia, who felt enslaved by her own hope. I have met Anna, who had built a life around someone who moved in and out of contact with the rhythm of his moods, and who could not sleep because her nervous system was permanently on guard. I have met Patricia, a clinician herself, who understood the pattern but could not exit it because the body did not care that the mind knew the theory. Knowledge without regulation is powerless. The same networks that light up in addiction light up when intermittent attention follows a period of withholding. The drug at least admits what it is. Intermittency insists it is love. Let us be explicit. Emotional intermittency is abuse. There are no bruises to photograph. There is often no shouting to record. There is a slow erosion of self-trust. The victim apologizes for existing. Maybe I am asking too much. Maybe I should be grateful. Maybe he just needs space. The mind that can construct elegant rationalizations is the mind most vulnerable to the trap. Intelligent, sensitive, empathetic women will stay longer because they can find more reasons. He had a difficult childhood. He is under stress. He is a good person deep down. The capacity to understand others becomes a blade turned inward. The physiology matches the psychology. When unpredictable attachment becomes a habit, the threat system keeps humming long after the phone is put down. Hypervigilance, sleep disturbance, headaches, gastrointestinal symptoms, muscle tension, and chronic fatigue are not personality flaws. They are the language of a body that has been asked for too long to scan for danger and guess the emotional weather of another person. The body keeps score. When episodic gaslighting is added to intermittency, the damage multiplies. You are told your memory is wrong and your feelings are dramatic. You begin to distrust the warnings your own mind and body send you. To survive the uncertainty, you begin to write your history in pencil so that you can erase what hurts to remember. That erasure costs you your compass. Intermittency is a door that never decides if it is open or closed. The mind stays at the threshold, wasting life energy trying to predict and to deserve. Boundaries soften. Self-valuation drops. You forgive without repair. You apologize for bringing up pain. You begin to bargain with your standards. With time, your definition of good enough shrinks until the best you can imagine is not being ignored for a few days. When you measure love by what it does not do to you, you have already accepted far too little. This pattern does not only exist in romance. It repeats in friendships that offer warmth only when your presence is convenient, in family systems that alternate pride and contempt, in workplaces where recognition is inconsistent and psychological safety is absent. The consequence is the same. Your nervous system is trained to expect unpredictability. Decision-making falters because attention is consumed by decoding signals. Social isolation creeps in because you cancel on people to be available for the moment he reappears. The world grows smaller as the phone grows larger. Think of the cost. Money spent trying to win back attention, time spent waiting for a next message that postpones your life, opportunities refused because your emotional calendar is controlled by another person. The cost is visible in bank statements and calendars, but the deeper debt is paid in years that could have been invested in friendships, work, creativity, and solitude chosen on purpose. So why you? Manipulators of this pattern tend to prefer the emotionally generous and the analytically gifted. These women hold devotion as a virtue, can reason for two, and have a tolerance for ambiguity developed in families where love had to be earned. Strengths become vulnerabilities only when boundaries are absent. A beautiful home with doors left open is not guilty for being beautiful, but it is the owner's work to install locks. The good news is that nervous systems heal. Neuroplasticity can be trained back in your favor. The first pivot is to name the pattern and treat the pattern as the truth, not the temporary sweet days. If over a month the ratio is 2 days of ease to 10 days of anxiety, the relationship is not a mystery. It is a syllabus. Now a clinical distinction. A request for space is not intermittency. A mature request for space is transparent, time-bound, and anchored in care. I need 2 weeks to focus on a crisis and I remain committed to us. Intermittency is distance without clarity, silence without accountability, return without repair. Whether or not the behavior is intended, the impact matters. We cannot outsource our mental health to another person's excuses. Change, when it is real, is long, slow, and visible in consistent action and individual therapy, not in promises after a crisis and dramatic reunions that end the moment vigilance relaxes. You are not obligated to be the proving ground for someone else's growth. If this is you, begin with validation. What you felt was real. The harm was real. You were not too much. You were living inside a structure engineered to make you doubt yourself. Then begin the work of re-regulation. Knowledge will support you. Boundaries will protect you. Practice will rewire you. This healing is not an idea. It is a series of repetitions. Intermittency teaches you to ask permission from the weather. If he is warm, you thaw. If he is cold, you freeze. After a while you cannot tell where your edges are. Your identity becomes a shape poured into a mold you did not choose. You intuit what will keep the connection alive, and you perform it. The cost is subtle at first. You hesitate before sharing your joy because joy has sometimes been met with distance. You soften your opinions because opinions have sometimes been punished with silence. You calibrate your availability to match his irregular rhythm. Over months the calibration becomes a way of living. You stop experimenting. You stop insisting on the hobbies and friendships that anchored you. You alter your schedule to be reachable. You shrink. The nervous system learns through pairing. If your honesty has repeatedly been followed by coldness, truth begins to feel unsafe. If your self-abandonment has repeatedly been followed by temporary closeness, self-betrayal begins to feel like security. This is classical conditioning. Authenticity is tagged as threat. Appeasement is tagged as safety. That conditioning is the reason a healthy relationship can initially feel dull. Without adrenaline and relief spikes, a stable bond may register as suspicious. Those butterflies that you once celebrated were not a sign of love. They were the side effect of chronic anticipatory anxiety. The absence of those feelings is not the absence of love. It is the presence of safety. And safety, if you have lived without it for years, can feel like a foreign language. Intermittency distorts memory. Sweet moments are encoded in high resolution because dopamine and adrenaline were elevated. Painful stretches become foggy because dissociation helped you survive them. In recall, the mind overweights a handful of high-contrast scenes and underweights the long days of emptiness. That is why writing is a revolutionary act in recovery. A daily emotional ledger that records contact, tone, and your felt sense defies the brain's selective amnesia. When you count what you actually lived rather than what you hoped for, the pattern stops hiding. Gaslighting complicates this further by attacking your reality testing. You are told that conversations did not happen or that your reaction proves you are unstable. The antidote is evidence. Evidence can be as simple as a non-judgmental record of events and as profound as the testimony of friends who witnessed you well before this relationship taught you to mistrust yourself. When your memory has been contested, the presence of people who knew your previous clarity becomes medicine. If you have withdrawn from those people, one of the first acts of healing is to return to them. Intermittency corrodes sexuality by making the bedroom a negotiation of relief rather than an expression of connection. After stretches of coldness, the body is recruited to repair what communication neglected. Intimacy becomes a transaction where the goal is to extinguish fear of loss. The body learns to couple arousal with anxiety and closeness with the dread of future distance. The result is sex that does not calm. The morning after, you feel more vigilant, not less, because the deeper need for reliability remains unmet. Healthy sexuality requires a climate of secure attachment. In that climate, your vulnerability is not used against you, and desire grows from a ground of respect. When intermittency is present, you do not make love, you bargain for oxygen. Intermittency bleeds into the rest of life. Decision paralysis increases because your cognitive resources are allocated to interpreting signals and predicting mood. Career opportunities are deferred because you cannot plan around a person who is emotionally unaccountable. Friendships are strained because you cancel repeatedly to respond to sudden opportunities for closeness. Over months you shape a life around waiting. There is a financial trail too. Money spent on appearances for rare meetings, on gifts meant to provoke attention, on therapy and medication to treat symptoms that are not random but relationally induced. When a patient calculates this cost, the number is striking, but it is the ledger of time that breaks the heart. What else could have been built with those months and years? There is also a cultural angle. We have allowed intensity to masquerade as depth. We have upgraded inconsistency into a romantic plot line. We have recast suffering as proof that love is real. Add technology and the laboratory is perfect. Read receipts become barometers of worth. A quiet account becomes a battlefield of interpretation. Likes are viewed as declarations. You become a detective whose data set is the least reliable in the world, the internet activity of a person who will not say out loud what they intend. Call this digital hypervigilance. Call it also exhausting. A relationship that requires you to monitor a screen to infer love is already a relationship that is not safe inside the room. If you grew up in a family where affection was conditional and attention inconsistent, the pattern will feel like home even when it is injuring you. The child who navigated variable care became an expert at reading subtle cues and adjusting behavior. That talent once preserved attachment. In adulthood it becomes a magnet for relationships where self-abandonment seems noble. The intergenerational truth is hard but liberating. You did not choose the first lessons. You can choose the rest of the curriculum. You can become the adult who gives your nervous system what it was denied: consistent care, predictable attention, and boundaries that protect dignity. Now the turning. You will not exit an intermittent bond by winning a debate. You will exit it by training your nervous system to stop consenting to the schedule. The basic unit of training is the pause. When the person reappears with warmth after a period of absence, you breathe and you wait. 10 seconds if that is all you can manage at first, 10 minutes, then 10 hours. In the pause you ask whether this attention compensates for damage done or continues a pattern you have already mapped. You will feel the pull to respond with gratitude larger than the gesture warrants. That is the addiction speaking through the mouth of hope. Gratitude is a virtue when it responds to consistent care. It is self-erasure when it rewards manipulation. Boundaries are not a rejection of compassion. Boundaries are compassion that includes you. The formula is simple and difficult. State the need, describe the minimum standard, define the consequence, and follow it. I require reliable contact and clarity about space. If you need time, say it directly and say for how long. Cycles of abrupt distance and return will end my participation. This is not cruelty. This is adult love of self. Every instance of following through strengthens the neural pathway that says I can protect myself. Every instance of making an exception dissolves that pathway. You are not punishing the other person. You are training your brain to believe you again. Expect ambivalence. You will miss the good days. You will question your memory. You will wonder whether you are being unforgiving. You will revisit private highlight reels and feel the ache of losing a future you rehearsed. All of this is normal. Grief is not evidence that you are wrong. Grief is evidence that you are human. If you do not allow yourself to grieve the fantasy, you will go back to buy it again. One more clinical point. Self-deception bias keeps many women in the maze. We are more lucid when advising a friend than when arguing with ourselves. Use this wisely. Externalize your case. Write it as if a beloved friend handed you the facts you have lived. Would you advise her to stay and try once more? Or would you guide her to reclaim her time? Borrow your own clean judgment by stepping a few inches to the side of the story. When you cannot trust your immediacy, trust your record. Recovery requires a plan. Not an abstract idea of being stronger but a stepwise protocol you can enact on days when your nervous system wants to go back. The following framework synthesizes what I teach in clinical practice. It respects the brain, honors the body, and builds a life aligned with worth rather than with waiting. Phase 1 is stabilization. In this phase you validate the injury and calm the system that has been overtrained to anticipate danger. You begin with 2 commitments. First, you will stop arguing with your feelings. If your chest tightens when a message is delayed, your body is not being dramatic. It is reporting history. Second, you will stop outsourcing your perception. If you experienced neglect, you will not require the neglector to certify it before you treat it as real. Then you institute nervous system care as a daily discipline rather than an occasional rescue. Sleep hygiene, light exposure in the morning to reset circadian rhythms, regular meals that keep blood sugar steady, and movement that discharges adrenaline become non-negotiable appointments with yourself. This is not self-care as a luxury. This is the physiological floor upon which judgment returns. In stabilization you also reduce the stimulus that trains the addiction. That means contact management. If no contact is possible, you choose it as medication. If limited contact is necessary because of shared obligations, you make it structured, brief, and content-bound to logistics only. You remove reminders where you can. You mute feeds that pull you into digital hypervigilance. You inform one trusted person of your plan so that when your resolve wavers you are not alone with your urge. Phase 2 is clarity. Here you gather data about the real pattern, not to accuse but to orient. You maintain the emotional ledger for at least 6 weeks. You write the date, the contact, the tone, and your body's response. You do not interpret in the moment. You collect. At the end of each week you total hours of ease and hours of anxiety. If the anxiety dominates, you do not argue with math. You allow the numbers to teach. In this phase you also map triggers. What sights, sounds, times of day, or phrases tend to send you back into the loop. You plan countermeasures. If evenings amplify longing, you prearrange evening anchors, a class, a call, or a book you only touch at night so that the mind has a place to go that is not the phone. If particular songs or streets flood memory, you choose routes and soundtracks that support you. You are designing a world that helps your brain heal. Phase 3 is boundaries and communication. You craft your statement in clear language, free of blame, focused on your needs and the structure you will accept. You speak it once. You do not renegotiate because a boundary rescinded is not a boundary. You expect pushback because the system has been benefiting from your flexibility. You prepare for 3 common maneuvers. Minimization: nothing was that bad. Reversal: you are the problem. Performance: a burst of ideal behavior without accountability. Your response is the same in each case. The pattern remains my concern, not the intention. I require consistency demonstrated over time. Until then I am stepping back. You are not responsible for teaching the other person how to heal. You are responsible for protecting the conditions under which you can heal. Phase 4 is grief and identity reconstruction. You mourn what you hoped for, the version of yourself you abandoned, and the years you lost. Mourning is not a setback. It is the work by which the future becomes possible. In grief you will feel the temptation to anesthetize with intensity and call it new love. Resist this. Post-intermittent nervous systems crave spikes. Stability will feel quiet at first. Allow quiet. Fill it with the practices and relationships you abandoned. Return to the friends who hold your history with kindness. Return to the projects that once made. You forget to check a phone. Make commitments that do not depend on anyone's mood. Keep them. Nothing rebuilds identity faster than doing what you say you will do to yourself. If you promise to take the class, take it. If you promise to walk at dawn, walk. The soul relearns trust when it sees itself follow through. Phase 5 is meaning. Many women exiting intermittency decide that suffering wasted them. I will insist on another option. Suffering can waste you or it can educate you. If you choose the latter, you use the experience to make 3 vows. First, I will never again betray my inner voice to keep the peace. Second, I will measure love by consistency rather than by intensity. Third, I will protect the conditions that keep my dignity intact even if I am alone. Solitude chosen on purpose is not a failure. It is an upgrade in the direction of freedom. In this phase you also define your green flags. Not the absence of harm but the presence of qualities that allow love to grow. Do they repair after friction? Do they communicate needs directly? Do they keep small promises? Do they treat your vulnerability as a trust and not a lever? You will move more slowly, not because you are cynical but because you are careful. Slowness becomes the gate through which only the consistent can enter. Alongside these phases you may choose therapy. Individual therapy is primary. Couples therapy can be valuable later if and only if a partner has already demonstrated accountability over months. The therapeutic tasks are straightforward though not easy. Cognitive restructuring to expose and replace beliefs that sanctify suffering. Emotion regulation skills to reduce hypervigilance and panic so that decisions are made from steadiness rather than from fear. Boundary practice through role plays so that your body learns what it feels like to hold the line. Trauma work when indicated to metabolize earlier experiences of inconsistent care so that the present is not colored by the past without your consent. There is no shame in needing help. We do not climb from deep wells by explaining the well to ourselves. We climb because someone lowers a ladder. As you progress, you will notice a return of simple joys that intermittency had stolen. Reading without rereading the same paragraph, sleeping without waking to check for messages, laughing without checking if laughter is allowed, making a plan that involves a future you can rely on. These are signs of a nervous system that is relearning safety. You may also notice the emergence of anger after the numbness lifts. Anger is a stage of coming home to yourself. Use it to set the last boundaries you avoided. Then let it fuel the life you are building rather than the story you already left. Will the pattern ever tempt you again? Perhaps. But you will not return to it as the same person. You will be a woman who has counted her days and decided to spend them on love that does not make her beg. A woman who can tell the difference between exhilaration and peace and will choose peace. A woman who knows that true love is not a riddle to be solved but a presence to be met each day with the same clarity. Respect is not intermittent. Care is not intermittent. Real intimacy is not intermittent. If it is intermittent, it is not what you want it to be. Let me close with the core truths I want anchored in your mind. Emotional intermittency is abuse because it teaches you to mistrust yourself and then punishes you for doing so. The brain you blame for being weak is working as it was trained. You can train it again. The heart you shame for staying so long was practicing loyalty with the wrong object. You can redirect that loyalty to the person who needs it most. You. The life you paused is still available. It is waiting on the other side of a door you get to close. Not with drama. With finality. With a hand on the knob and a quiet sentence. I will not live by someone else's weather. I choose a climate of respect. When you step through that door, you do not step into emptiness. You step into a home you are building one consistent promise at a time. You sleep. You wake. You move your body. You feed your mind. You meet the people who love you and you remain with them because you are no longer secretly waiting for a message that decides whether your evening has value. You work. You rest. You remember that a life is not measured by how well it survives storms invented by someone else, but by how steadily it grows in the light of its own commitments. And if love enters later, it will recognize you by the way you treat yourself. It will see that you no longer accept crumbs. It will offer you a table. And you will take your seat as if you belonged. Because you do.